The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 3. Here begins Abram's epic journey from Mesopotamia to the destination to which God calls him. God calls Abram to leave his home, and Abram leaves. His response to God's call will alter the course of history. Following the story of the Tower of Babel, this is the first recorded speech from God. God now intends to restore the circumstances described in Genesis 1 to 2. In chapters 1 to 11, there were 5 distinct uses of the word curse. Genesis chapter 3, verse 14, Genesis chapter 3, verse 17, Genesis chapter 4, verse 11, Genesis chapter 8, verse 21, and Genesis chapter 9, verse 25. But now, in 3 verses, we find 5 uses of the word blessing. The word blessing means to impart life. God will bring a dead world back to life through Abram. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 3, God blesses Abram and his descendants before commissioning them on an unstoppable mission to bless all families throughout the world. From the outside, Abram's future journey appears to be a typical family journey, chapter 11, verse 31. But it was anything but. It was his response to God's call. Abram must leave 3 circles of familiarity: his country, his people, and his father's household. He is leaving everything from his past. When God saw the wickedness of Noah's day, he reinstituted his plan by selecting one faithful man. The same pattern can be seen here with Abram. God's desire to fill the earth with his glory and bless all peoples remains, but he began that mission by calling one person. As a result, God commanded Abram to leave his land, relatives, and father's house and travel to a new land. Abram was forced to act on faith because he had no idea where God was leading him. He only knew that if he obeyed, God would reward him by making him a great nation, making his name great, and even using him to bless others. Through Abram, God was advancing his kingdom agenda. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord, who had appeared to him. Genesis chapter 12, verse 4 to 7. Abram obeyed God's command, leaving Haran with his wife Sarai, nephew Lot, and all the other people who were also taking a leap of faith with Abram. God promised to give this land to Abram's descendants when he arrived at the Oak of Moreh, which was most likely a Canaanite worship center. Abram's faith in action had resulted in additional illumination. This is God's pattern. Obedience not only leads to blessing, but it also leads to a clearer understanding of God's will, purpose, and direction in our lives. God speaks in response to our obedience, not our rebellion. From there, he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There, he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev. Genesis chapter 12, verse 7 to 9. Abram responded to God's promise by erecting 2 altars to the true God, one in Moreh and the other in Bethel, in the midst of a pagan environment. These altars represented public declarations of faith. We may not build stone altars today, but we should make public declarations of our faith in God, even if our society rejects him. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. Abram began his journey of faith well, obediently leaving Haran, traveling to Canaan, and making declarations of allegiance to God along the way. But his faith soon gave way to fear. A famine caused Abram and his family to travel to Egypt for food. This was a bad move because God had made it clear that he wanted Abram in Canaan, not Egypt. The moment Abram assessed the situation from a human perspective, he made a decision that threatened to jeopardize God's program. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you." When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman, and when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. Genesis chapter 12, verse 11 to 15. Abram's fear grew while he was in Egypt. He was afraid that someone would see Sarai's beauty and kill him in order to get to her. So he devised a strategy to save his skin. Sarai was to say that she was Abram's sister, which, according to chapter 20, verse 12, was half true. Abram may have reasoned that any serious suitor would have to ask Abram for permission to marry Sarai, giving them enough time to flee. However, not just any suitor expressed an interest. Pharaoh wanted Sarai as a wife, so he broke all the rules and welcomed her right into the palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. The immediate outcome of this little drama was that Abram got fabulously wealthy, but at what cost? No amount of money could make up for the fact that Abram was ready to give up his wife and abandon the promise of God for mere self-preservation. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. Genesis chapter 12, verse 17 to 20. This strange story exemplifies God's dedication to his kingdom program and promises. He sent severe plagues on Pharaoh's household, alerting the people involved that they had been duped. Pharaoh, whose position of power would have allowed him to do almost anything, acted with more integrity than Abram in returning Sarai without punishing the couple. When Jews in New Testament days spoke of their heritage and spiritual legacy, they claimed Abraham as their father. John chapter 8, verse 33. They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free?" John chapter 8, verse 39. They answered and said to him, "Abraham is our father." Jesus said to them, "If you were Abraham's children, you could do the works of Abraham." Why did they give him the title father, a term of respect synonymous with leadership? Because Abraham went the distance. Genesis chapter 11, verse 31 tells us that Abraham's father, Terah, set out for Canaan from Ur of the Chaldeans long before Abraham made a similar trip. But for some reason, Terah stopped in Haran and never continued his journey. Did Terah receive an original call from God to move to the promised land, but neglect to follow through? We'll never know. We do know that Abraham did not make such a blunder. Despite making other mistakes as a leader, Abraham always seemed to follow through on his promises. When God summoned him to an unknown land, he went the distance.